Welcome. We have Bob Knight with us today to discuss what's going on in Minneapolis, specifically from a Christian's perspective, specifically in relation to the attack on the city's church in St. Paul on January 18th, in which Don Lemon played a role. And there he is with the pastor, Reverend Jonathan Parnell. And what's interesting is when this church was attacked and invaded, the topic of the Reverend's sermon was literally love one another. And it was about Jesus's instruction in the book of John for his followers to love one another. And that's what they were attacking. So that has to be part of the story. The other piece of context that needs to be put in there is, of course, on January 10th, there was an arson attack at the Beth Israel Synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi, which turned out to be done by a disturbed teenager, which is a good thing. But that church had been bombed during the civil rights movement by Ku Klux Klansmen. And on August 27th, 2025, there was a shooting at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis that left 2 dead and 17 injured. And that was an openly anti-Catholic attack. So what you have is a rising tide of attacks on religious institutions, let us say traditional religious institutions. And it seems to have been lost in this discussion regarding Minneapolis and ICE, where it's now seen as fair game to go into houses of worship and terrorize people, something that was anathema during the civil rights movement, which was universally condemned by all people of goodwill, is now being excused, if not encouraged, by some of the highest voices in the land. And I wanted to ask Bob, because he's been in the Protestant world very active for a very long time, not only what he thinks of it, but what does he think the reaction is going to be from the Protestant and evangelical community?
I think they realize this is a watershed moment, Larry. We've not seen churches invaded like this before. And the feeling is somebody better nip this in the bud quickly or it'll spread quickly. Same with what's going on in Minnesota with these riots. The perpetrators need to be brought to justice. If the federal government just pulls out, says, "Ooh, this is too dangerous for us," then that will just inflame leftist agitators in every city, and we'll end up with more George Floyd type riots that happened in 2020, burned many a city. This is classic Marxist agitation, where they do something outrageous, they get a little pushback, and then they claim to be victims. That's their playbook. It has been since the French Revolution, really. They cause, and especially their use of violence. This attack on the church was unprecedented, at least in recent history, because they went in and disturbed a perfectly peaceful service. They chanted the name of the woman who the ICE agent shot when she was careening toward him in her car, in her SUV. And they said terrible things and got kids crying and screaming. And they told the kids that your parents are Nazis. And they prevented parents from going downstairs to get their kids from the Sunday school area. They actually blockaded it. So you got crying kids and their parents trying to get to them. This is terrorism. It's a form of terrorism. One woman tripped, I guess, and when people were rushing out, she got injured somewhat. So, but that was it. The injury is the idea that we're no longer safe even in churches. And I'm talking about American people who believe in God, want to worship freely, and want to worship peacefully. The left in this country, which is anti-God, it's atheistic, it's actually demonic, I believe, wants to turn churches into the symbol of retrograde fascistic uh, politics. And they are utterly ruthless. People have to realize what we're up against here. And they're targeting synagogues, Catholic churches, and now a Protestant church. And they don't really make any distinctions, although there has been this terrible rise in anti-Semitism. And the one good thing about that is people are waking up to it. And a lot of Christians are banding together and saying, not on our watch. We're not going to let this happen in this country.
Well, I think actually it's worse than you even say, because I believe a lot of this anti-Semitism is being fomented by forces that want to destroy, destabilize, and collapse the United States. I mean, I think what
I
we
agree.
saw
I agree.
is it's a policy of divide and rule, and it's to create chaos. And if you look at the playbooks and scripts used you don't have to go back to the French Revolution, the color revolutions sponsored by the United States, you often saw the same type of things. I mean, in Russia, where the United States was trying to bring down Vladimir Putin, they paid protesters to go into Orthodox churches during services and disrupt them. And there was a band, a rock band, supposedly, but called Pussy Riot, which made a specialty of this. They were all girl band, and they were
They
sort of
were
sweet. So,
paid CIA agitators? Pussy Riot?
well, let's put it this way: they were allegedly paid CIA agitators. They may have just been paid by some NGOs and foundations, but
Okay.
whoever was paying them, they were subsequently they went into exile and they were put on
Seems like
trial.
something Putin
And
would do, you know, that
well,
to rev up the Russian population and portray him as the great savior.
he doesn't.
It
He
just
doesn't.
sounds like a false flag operation to
Yeah.
me.
Except they went to the West, and they were brought to the West, and they were tried in absentia and sentenced to years in prison. But it was
Ah,
having been in the former Soviet Union, it was, I guarantee you, something the United States supported either directly or indirectly. But the point is, the church invasions aren't even that new, because the poor Catholic Church during the AIDS crisis was being invaded all the time by people blaming the Pope for AIDS, the Cardinal for AIDS, and they would disrupt church services and throw supposedly fake blood around and so forth and so on. And then
St.
I
Patrick's
met
Cathedral was invaded.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and this is many years
Hmm.
ago. And then I met a nice Catholic lady in Washington D.C. She was actually a convert from Episcopalianism. Her father had been an Episcopal minister, and she told me at her church in suburban Washington, pro-abortion protesters would come in and disrupt the services. And this was just a few years ago. So, although it hadn't hit the Protestant church yet, the Catholics have been dealing with it for quite a while. And of course, now we see synagogues attacked in Brooklyn and in New York, where people
Right.
are harassed over Gaza. The attack on religious institutions is very, very serious, and it's not going to go away. And it's not free speech. And as you said, it's not only a form of terrorism; it's uh, 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 it's actually a form of anti-clericalism. I mean, basically, you have a revolutionary movement that wants to destroy organized religion, and I
It,
think it's a frightening moment, because I believe, just from the reaction of the people to the St. Paul thing, they still don't realize it. They think it's an isolated incident.
it's a weather vane. It's a test. They really they push. And what did Lenin say? Lead with a bayonet and then push until you hit stone or something like that, or steel. Uh, so I think it's a very serious incident, and three people have been arrested under the FACE Act. The Justice Department went after them. One of them is a public official, um, And another is a professional agitator who's been spotted at other anti-ICE demonstrations around the country. And another, I think, positive development is Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, is investigating these online groups that seem to be coordinating all these protests. They, and I would like to see him get to the bottom of who's funding them, who's directing them. It's a Marxist network, no doubt about it. It
Well,
isn't
you
just
say that,
spontaneous
but according
protests.
to reports, at least one, I think it was the lieutenant governor of Minnesota, may be involved. So I think you'll find it goes beyond fringe elements,
Yeah,
and
it
you'll
probably
find
does. Well,
that it, at some level, taxpayers are paying for this.
yeah, probably. And Minnesota's up to its ears, right up to the top with Tim Walz. And I don't know if you saw the clip of his misrepresenting an incident in which ICE was after an illegal alien who then fled and left his 5-year-old daughter. And so the agent said, well, we can't just leave a child alone. So they took her into protective custody to keep her safe. And the left went nuts. And they said, look, ICE agents are harassing 5-year-old girls. And Waltz compared it to Anne Frank, uh, who was in danger of being exterminated by the Nazis. And he said, you know, the children's stories were told about her, and someday they'll be told about this girl. What a smear and a misrepresentation. It's off the charts. I mean,
But
just any,
it's
how
not
anybody could
just
be
Tim
that
Walz alone.
dishonest.
It's not
Well,
Tim Walz alone.
no,
Today,
Kamala
according to
Harris posted a post on those grounds. Hillary Clinton posted a similar post. The prominent Democrats got right behind it and used it the way the Communist Party does. They take an incident, falsify it, and then personalize it, as Saul Alinsky said to do, and polarize it, meaning just use it as a wedge against any common sense in the situation. I mean, I think they are hoping for more martyrs in Minnesota. They've had a couple people lose lives because of these protests, and I think they're you think that'd be enough for them, you know, with the George Floyd effect. But I think they're thinking, hey, we need one more. So I fear for the poor person who has been persuaded that this is a good idea to go up against law enforcement and do something really stupid.
well, you make a good point, and I think it's even more frightening than that because today's Holocaust Remembrance Day, some sort of official commemoration. I don't
81st
know where
anniversary
that
or
comes
something.
from, but
Yeah.
this Democratic Congressman Stephen Cohen, I saw it on X. He gave a speech, and he said the same thing. Democratic. This is obviously a Democratic talking point memo. ICE are the Nazis. The people killed by ICE are the Jews, and you must fight for these poor innocent victims. Now, the truth of the matter is, we just discovered on our last trip to Holland, where we were doing some genealogy, that my mother actually lived across the square from Anne Frank.
No kidding. Hmm.
Anne Frank did not spend her life going up and attacking Dutch freedom fighters trying to drive foreigners out of their country. Of course, the foreigners were the Nazis, and the freedom fighters were the Dutch resistance. So the correct analogy would be that ICE is the resistance to a foreign invasion, and that de facto that makes the Nazis into these so-called peaceful protesters, which, by the
Yep.
way, the Nazis started out with their brown shirt protests, and they would go out beating up people, and they would even invade churches and burn down synagogues. So it's not that far fetched. So I wish the president, instead of defending peaceful protesters, which is just another word for violent revolutionaries, would not defend them and say, you know who the Nazis are here? These are the Nazis. These are the people
It,
who are invading our country. These are the people who are destroying our system. These are the people who are killing our liberties. These are the people who are destroying our freedom of worship. But unfortunately, we haven't heard that. And I'm wondering, since you've been around Washington a long time and are plugged in as a columnist and an expert, why do you think the president seems to be responding the same way he did to the George Floyd thing instead of shifting gears and taking a harder line?
because I think he feels the media will take anything he says out of context, and of course they always do, and that anything he says will be amplified and distorted to aid the leftists. So he's being very careful for a change in what he says. But I think the Republicans in general have to explain to the American people the stakes here. We have a communist revolution, okay? And this isn't 50s rhetoric with the Red Scare. This is real. There's a Marxist attempt to divide us, to use violence when they can, and to take over power and to make sure that they don't lose it. That's why they're trying to turn Virginia into a one-party state. They just they won the recent election. They pretended to be moderates. Abigail Spanberger, the new governor in particular, and it turns out they're not moderate in any sense. They have introduced bills to prevent the agencies that dispense federal funds through nonprofits not to identify eligibility for any recipient. That's a recipe for fraud. You know, with what's going on in Minnesota, with billions of dollars in welfare fraud from child care to Medicaid, for the Democrats to introduce a bill saying we're going to hand out federal dollars, but you can't ask if you're qualified to receive them or not. It's just that's just the tip of the iceberg. They've got a completely radical agenda. They're raising any number of taxes. They are trying to blow apart election security. They have several bills that weaken election law to make it easier to cheat. They want to just stay in power indefinitely and increase government. They're socialists, or they you might even call them Marxists, because they will use whatever means necessary to advance the state at the expense of all other institutions, especially the church, synagogues, and the family. Those are the enemies of the socialists. They are atheist in outlook, and they're full of hate for anything natural, normal, God-given. That's what people need to realize. We're no longer arguing about which policies are best for the people. We're talking about stopping a communist revolution that will destroy everything we hold dear. And if that sounds like hyperbole, pardon me, but that's what I see out there now.
Well, it's something that they themselves declare when they have these riots. They're people with communist symbols in the crowd, in addition to Islamic fundamentalist symbols and keffiyehs and so forth. Let me ask you a little bit about this Don Lemon issue, though. How do
Yes.
people fight it when, for instance, okay, charges are brought against Don Lemon and the judge won't sign? What we have is
Yeah.
a judiciary uh, that is part of the revolutionary cause. It seems.
Yes, I think we do. The Democrats are very good at placing their people when they have a Democratic administration, whether it's Clinton, Obama, or Biden. These judges are there to stop any uh, or any speed bumps on the way to socialism. When the federal government actually is executing constitutionally sound policies, they're there to say, no, we're going to distort the Constitution to say you can't do that. And you see it over and over and over again. You saw it when when the Homeland Security was cracking down on Venezuelans and others, illegal immigrants and gang members, you had federal judges stepping in saying, no, no, you can't deport them. Sorry. We're going to give them all sorts of constitutional rights, even though they're here illegally. Um, they have some rights as human beings, but they don't have constitutional rights that belong to U.S. citizens. And that's a real distortion. It's like the Don Lemon saying that the invasion of that church in Minnesota is an example of free speech protected by the First Amendment. No, it's not. You can't invade a church. That's private property. You can't interrupt a church service and interfere with religious activities. That's illegal under the FACE Act. Um, and and it's also just wrong. It's uncivil. It eats at the heart of our idea of civilization, which is that we feel we can worship as we see fit. And the founders of this country were geniuses. They really were, and they introduced a constitution that to this day has enormous power. Even when the left is taking it out of context, the document is so clear as to our rights that there is a way to countermand it as long as you get the people in place to do it. In other words, conservative judges, conservative
Well, let me
legislatures.
go. Let me interrupt you there because I think in this Don Lemon case, well, maybe not that judge, but some of the judges in some of these types of cases have been appointments by Bush, or even one was a Trump judge. Now, some of
Yep.
this they say, well, that's because under the blue slips in the Senate and so liberal judges can be appointed by conservative Republicans and blah blah blah. But the point is, some of these judges had been appointed in Republican administrations and got through a Republican Senate, and you have a serious problem with legal education up and down the line. Like how do you even get through law school these days? And who's teaching in the law schools? But you talk about the FACE Act. The First Amendment of the Constitution is what we're talking about here. If this country has no freedom of religion, it's not America anymore. If we don't have freedom
Absolutely.
of speech, if the pastor can't give a sermon, uh, uh, and don't forget freedom of assembly.
Yep.
The reason that church was
Leftists
being
are,
attacked was because an ICE agent was a member or an assistant pastor. Excuse me?
yep.
You can't have freedom of assembly. He can't belong to any organization. He has to be shunned. He has to be starved. He has to die. I mean, can't work, can't worship. I mean, this is what they're talking about, totalitarian tendencies that are not being addressed here. And instead, well, let's go one step further. If we look at this picture, what we notice is Don Lemon, who's being quite aggressive and sort of pushing towards him as the pastor leans back. He's not there just as a protester, is he? He's also supposedly, purportedly, a member of the media, although I think his show is also self-produced like this podcast. And the media is not a neutral observer reporting on what's happening here, is it?
been for a long time, Larry, and both of us know that from having to deal with them in DC. Uh, they are fully owned subsidiaries of the Democratic Party and the socialist movement. They distort the news. I think their worst sins are by omission, where they leave out important facts. Um, it seems like years ago that Trump took out the nuclear facilities in Iran. That they were busy trying to make nuclear weapons, and that was a incredible thing he did uh, for the good of our country, Israel, and the whole world, because the Iranian regime is a terrorist regime. But you don't hear a thing about it anymore. People have forgotten already, and he just did that earlier this year, just earlier last year. Or when was it? It was mid 2025, and uh, the they omit facts about basic issues constantly. They distort, uh, and it's not enough to say that. You have to give examples. I'm just amazed. I read the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Times every day. I read the Washington Times first because it's actual news. It's very well done. It's a first-rate newspaper, and I do love the commentary section, not just because I'm in it every week, but because of the other writers like Don Feder and Everett Piper and Kelly Sadler. I mean, there's some great writers there. Uh, but then I read the Wall Street Journal, and the news section is pretty slanted liberal. I mean, they take the usual Democratic line on most things, but the editorial pages are full of very lively discussions. They have some stuff you can't get anywhere else, so I find it indispensable. And then I turn to the Washington Post, which has gotten so bad under Jeff Bezos's leadership that it isn't even a liberal paper anymore. The news pages are almost a caricature of left-wing propaganda. You see the opinion right there in the headlines. Um, they can't help themselves. They're just so wired to be anti-Trump, anti-GOP, anti-family, anti-normalcy. They use the they pronoun frequently for these non-binary people they interview. They go right along with the desecration of the grammar of the English language to make an ideological point. But I will say this, Larry, the editorial page has changed markedly over the last few months since Jeff Bezos said, you guys are going too far. I want to see more balance. I want to see a little bit of defending the free market system since that's what benefits us all. Well, you see it in the editorials. Many of them are very reasonable. This was not the case a year ago. But the news pages are still run
Hmm.
by, it looks like they're run by hardcore socialist lesbians. That seems to be uh, the cadre that is in charge of the newsroom.
What was that group that killed Andy Warhol? The Society for Cutting Up Men, or something like that.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
the
yeah. No, no, you just see the radical politics. They're just the news pages are suffused with them, and it would be laughable, except they apparently uh, affect a lot of people. And a lot of the left-wing news outlets take their cue from the Washington Post and the New York Times. And the New York Times is just as bad, I guess. I don't see it.
and
I don't subscribe
Rachel
to it.
Maddow, I think, still has a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
viewers. So
yep, on
let me ask you a question,
MSNBC.
though. I mean, I think there's a serious issue with the media here because if the media is actually part of this and inciting violence and fomenting riots and
Yep,
spreading rumors and creating destabilization, um, I remember in the 1960s, Nixon had this guy, Clay Whitehead, who was the Whitehead House Communications Advisor. And they came up with this elaborate plan to get some control over the media. And their idea was to set up cable television. And then Carter, actually, because he was from the South, anti-Northeast, they set up CNN in Atlanta, which was
Ted
balanced
Turner.
when it
Yeah.
started, believe it or not. I remember that. I mean, I used to be on Crossfire, and
I did Crossfire a couple times myself.
you
Yeah.
see, and the thing is, uh, I don't get the sense. I mean, we do have X and we have Truth, but I don't get the sense that there's a real attempt to. I mean, although you say something's happening at the Washington Post, so maybe we just don't know about it. But it seems to me they get away with an awful lot of stuff they shouldn't be getting away with. I mean, since you're actually a newspaper columnist, I mean, what's your sense of that? Is there anything that can be done about let's call it the
The
Marxist
lying media.
propaganda?
Yeah, yeah, it's moved from bias to pure propaganda in many cases. And I keep track of it, cutting out these articles, but I don't want to sound like a uh, that I'm repetitious. I could do a column on media bias and propaganda every week. I think Media Research Center does a fine job of exposing it, especially on the networks. They actually quantify it. They'll say that, okay, President Trump has been subjected to 94% of coverage that's negative to only 6% positive, that sort of thing. You know, sometimes that's effective. Other times it's just revealing what everybody knows, which is that the media have such bias they can't seem to constrain themselves, and they don't even
But I don't think
try.
it's bias. I don't think it's bias. I think they see themselves as soldiers for the cause,
Oh,
and
I
their
agree. I
job,
agree.
it's not biased. But then you go, what can you do about it? So, for example, President Trump, God bless him, eliminated funding for PBS and NPR. And this was something I worked on 30 years ago. You knew me then.
Yeah, you were
I was
amazed when he
delighted.
actually did it,
I
right?
I wrote him a thank you letter, and yet this is something I asked you and Tim Graham, who was at the Media Research Center back then and still today. I don't understand. They're still on the air. They're still doing the same thing. It's made no difference one way or the other. That shows they didn't need the federal money, so we were correct on the facts. But the effect
Yep.
is there's been no impact whatsoever of this, and I don't understand that. So I mean, there's not only no off switch when you pull the plug, still it keeps going through perpetual motion. I mean, there seems to be no way to affect anything. I wonder how that can
No,
be, and has
Larry, that
anyone thought of anything anyone can do?
might you might say give it time because one now that the federal dollars have been cut off, um, they they're having to depend totally on private funding. Of course, they've got a lot of it. They've got a lot of liberal foundations that love to virtue signal by funding public broadcasting. Uh, but I don't know how much market share they have anymore. Have you looked into that? I don't know that they're as big a
I don't
force as they
know.
used to be.
I mean, I
Uh,
stopped listening years ago because I just couldn't stand it, and I don't watch. And I think when I once in a while I look at Nielsen or whatever when I can look for ratings, they're going down. But
yeah,
I don't think it's about ratings.
yeah.
I think somehow, even if no one watched, it's like some strange philosophical thought experiment. If no one watched PBS and no one listened to NPR, would they still be influential? And some of it is, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, you might say that the people who are watching and listening to it are journalists, people like that, and urban elites who kind of set uh, the tone for everything else. So
So
they
it's
may have
serving as a
power
list
beyond
serve.
sheer numbers of people
It's serving
watching.
as a list serve for the elite, so that it still has the
Yeah,
influence that the average listener didn't matter.
that could well be. Um, uh, I
It's
don't
a
know, but
party
I
organ. It's a party organ giving the line of the day on whatever the issue is.
oh, absolutely. And when you say party, I'm assuming you mean Democrat Party, but
Or
it
there could be
really
another
is
party behind the Democratic Party at this
right.
point. I mean,
Marxism. Yeah, it just they really do see themselves as revolutionaries. I've worked in several newsrooms and uh, especially as an editor, and I had to edit out bias all the time. And some of these people were just locked in and going to use their platforms to try to change society and make it more fair, more equitable. And if they didn't want to let facts get in their way, and I'm talking about major publications like the LA Times, Miami Herald, uh, they do some good reporting too. I have to give them credit for that. There's a certain degree of legitimacy in much of the legacy media, uh, and everybody uses them as an authority, even when they're far left, because you figure, well, that won't be challenged. So, but I think that the conservatives, people who believe in the original American idea of freedom in this country, need to develop more of our own media and make it excellent so it can compete with the legacy media. I think you cannot undervalue X as a conduit for alternative ideas. Elon Musk,
Oh, I'm an
uh,
addict. I praise Elon Musk for doing this. I mean, it's incredible. He also had a lot of courage. He got a lot of grief talking about violence.
yep,
They burned down Tesla dealerships.
yes. Yeah, these are the gentle leftists who were proclaiming electric cars would save us from a warming planet. And instead, they set fire to dealerships, because Musk isn't their political flavor anymore. It's just, it's pretty
They seem
bad.
to like
Listen, I'm going to
fire.
have to get
They
going.
Okay. Well,
We're going to
thank
have
you
to
very
wrap
much.
this
Can you
up.
tell us? I think you have a new book coming out. Is that right?
No, well, I've got a novel that I'm trying to get published.
Oh,
I already have a book out, but
well,
I've
that's
got
the
10
one. Your
books on my
latest
site.
book. You had a book since I last talked to you. What's the book that you've
Oh,
published most
okay.
recently?
Well, let me grab it. Since we're talking
And
about religion
hold it
and
up.
freedom, it's The Battle for America's Soul. 10 Steps to Restore Freedom. So it gives people how we're under attack by Marxist revolutionaries and how to meet them and what you can do. So it's a practical book, but it's well documented. Uh, like Crooked, the book that preceded it, where I looked at 2020 and I documented all the anomalies and uh, things that made no sense at all that Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump. And I put it all in one place. So people could read that. If they read that book and still think that election was on the up and up, then I can't help them because the facts are glaring. Uh, and I won't get into them now. That's a whole other topic. But
But in the
anyway,
battle for America,
if people want
yeah.
to look at my books, they can go to roberthknight.com. Just stick an H in there, roberthknight.com.
Okay. And can you tell us on the battle for America's soul? I mean, don't give away everything, but you said there are 10 steps. What are a couple of the steps that can?
See, what did I say? Uh, Getting off the sidelines is one of them. Getting off the couch, doing something. There are a lot of practical steps on election day. I think more of our folks ought to be signing up to be election officials because they can do a lot more than just be poll watchers. In fact, and they get paid for it and then keep an eye on things. So that's important. But they could be a poll watcher if they don't have the time to devote to being an election official. They should talk to their neighbors and share good media with them. Certainly, churches need to get far more involved. Pastors have involved and explain to their congregations what the stakes are here. Um, I think the probably one of the most outspoken pastors today is Gary Hamrick of Cornerstone Chapel in Leesburg, Virginia. And he's also one of the most outspoken supporters of Israel and against anti-Semitism. In fact, within last week, he had a whole forum on anti-Semitism and its roots, how it's manifesting itself, and why Christians have to band together to push it back. He exposed some formerly conservative people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I'm not saying he shouldn't say he's a former conservative, but he has done and said some pretty bizarre things when it
Let
comes
me ask you a
to.
question. Were you ever on Tucker's show?
I was on Crossfire with him once when he hosted that.
Oh.
Um, I was not on. Well, I was never on with him when he was on Fox or his podcast afterwards. But I know him, uh, and he was a very important voice on Fox. And that was before he started doing things like interviewing Nick Fuentes and giving him a platform, the neo-Nazi white supremacist Holocaust denier. I can't excuse that. You don't give a forum to somebody who's that far out.
But
And
listen, he never had you on his show on Fox. He certainly never had me on his show on Fox. As you say,
No, he didn't.
I was on Crossfire with somebody else. But the point is, you were too hot for Tucker Carlson's show, but Nick Fuentes isn't. Now that tells me something
Yeah,
very funny.
good point. Good point. Well, I think
It tells me that there's something not kosher about this operation. That's what it tells me. And the same with Candace Owen. I mean, I told you, but I always like to repeat it just for the record. When we were at Heritage together, I was working on the PBS issue. His father was head of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting at the time.
right.
I was in an elevator, and he got on the elevator with me. The doors closed, and he started screaming with me at me. You leave my dad alone. You drop it. Stop criticizing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, etc. And I said to him, "Excuse me, this isn't personal. I have nothing against your father. All I want to do is fix the problem." Then the doors opened and that was it. But it was
Yeah.
basically, I found it very threatening and very strange behavior. And, I was at the Heritage Foundation. I wasn't renewed. I had to go work for David Horowitz. And I always suspected there might have been something else going on behind the scenes I didn't know, because he's beloved by the Heritage Foundation. I think he's raised a lot of money for them and so forth and so on. But there's always been something to me ever since that incident in 1991 or 92, a lingering suspicion. So I don't know what's going on. Cato Byrne once said to me, "You can never ask who's paying people or who they're working for in Washington because you never can find out." So you just
Okay.
have to deal. You just have to deal with what's on the
And she
surface.
was the vice president of Heritage.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, she was a great person. She was wonderful. So as negative my experience with Tucker Carlson, it was positive with Cato Byrne. So
Yep.
I can't say enough good things about her. Um, but enough memory lane. But in other words, there's all sorts of stuff we don't know and we're not privy to. But sometimes it's like in the Manchurian Candidate, where the anti-communist Joe McCarthy figure
Yep.
at the end turns out to be a communist agent.
Yes. I know that what is
So
once just a conspiracy turns out to be true, all too often. Not that there aren't boneheaded conspiracies out there. There are plenty of them, and a lot of them are on X. But others, X is full of really good information too, that the media just ignore, the legacy media. I mean,
well,
they really don't want to touch the Minnesota welfare fraud scandals. And that's going elsewhere. It's going into Maine. It's going into Ohio. I think they're going to go after California. I think this thing
everywhere. It's the
is
whole system.
it's
I
a
wonder.
huge system of fraud, and it funds the Democratic Party, and it allows them to use heavy-handed tactics and try to fix elections. I mean, we could go into the whole election integrity thing, but I don't have time now. I've got to
Yeah,
go.
but anyway, we'll come back. Anyway, thank you. This has been very thought provoking, and I sure hope that something is done very quickly, as you said, to nip this thing. I'd say it's no longer a bud, but in the flower before it germinates and spreads pollen or whatever all over the place, and you have thousands and thousands of these incidents happening all over. But I do
Yep.
think it's very, very dangerous, and I hope, as you said, that not only religious leaders but also, honestly, political leaders of all stripes, because you don't want to end up like Lebanon, where you have these gangs,
Factions.
Christians against Muslims, blowing up each other's churches. I mean, maybe enemies of the United States want to see that, but no American should
Sure
want
they
our
do.
country. Pardon?
Sure they do. They are hoping and aiding any effort that will divide us and turn us into people who are at each other's throats. Divide
So
and conquer,
all
like you said.
all people of goodwill, Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives, Christians and Muslims and Jews and Hindus and Buddhists and everybody, they all have to agree that there's no place for the actions or the rhetoric that many, many people are using now, including some well-known public figures and political figures, and that has to be dealt with somehow. And I
Yep.
think it's got to come from what do they call it? All of government effort. I mean, in other words, because if it's Protestant evangelicals one day, Catholics another day, Jews another day, it's going to be ineffective. Everyone has to hang together. So that's
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
anyway. I love
Well,
talking to you. I'll
couldn't
let you
agree with you
go.
more.
I know you're busy. Enjoy shoveling the snow, such as it is out there, and
Yeah.
hopefully next time we talk, we'll have some providential miracles that will have turned everything around.
Yeah. Well, Trump's election was one, I believe. I think it pulled us back from the brink. And
And
it really did. I mean, if Kamala Harris was president now, I just cringe, and a lot of other people do too. But on that note, I'm going to have to say sorry, and
okay,
say I'm sorry to go. But
okay. Well, it was a
God
pleasure.
bless you, Larry.
And
Keep
God
the
bless
word
you.
out.
And I will follow you in the Washington Times and uh, look for your new book. Could you say the title one more time? The
Oh, it's
Battle for America's Soul,
The
right?
Battle for America's Soul. You can get it at my website.
All
I
right.
don't have it in bookstores. You can just get it at my website. Oh,
Oh, roberthknight.com.
yep.
All right. We'll be
And
there.
it's not
Okay.
expensive, and it's well documented.
Even
And
if
I'd
it
like to
were
think it's well
expensive,
written. So,
it would be worth it because I read Crooked. And as you know, we were banned on YouTube for something related to
yes.
it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I still can't believe if you had told me in 1991 when we met what would happen since, I wouldn't have believed you. It's too far fetched,
All
but
right.
truth is stranger than fiction. So
It
anyway, let's
is.
hope we have some positive surprises from above, and that there's some happy outcomes coming because we need some good news, and we
Yes, we
just have to
do.
have faith in that. All right, take care. Have a good night, and
All
we'll
right.
talk to you again soon. I hope. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, Larry.